So I want to start with this. Yesterday, I'm sure you've seen this, when CNN's Wolf Blitzer asked Nancy Pelosi why she won't move forward on a recent stimulus plan, Pelosi went on the defensive. She made it clear that advancing a stimulus plan isn't her goal. And then she accused Blitzer of being a Republican apologist and then mocked Representative Ro Khanna's efforts to provide the stimulus to millions of Americans in need of it. I mean, it's just good to remember that, of course, few people do more to help the Republicans than Nancy Pelosi. But let's just play that clip real quick.
Tax credit in their proposal either. But let's not go into that.
Yeah,
you evidently do not respect the chairman of the committees who wrote these bills.
I respect
and
all of you.
I wish you would respect the knowledge that goes into getting meeting the needs of the American people. But again, you've been on JAG defending the administration all this time with no knowledge of the difference between our two bills. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that to you in person.
Right. Madam Speaker,
virtually.
these are incredibly difficult times right now. And we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'll leave it on the vote that you are not right on this, Wolf, and I hate to say that to you. But I feel confident about it, and I feel confident about my colleagues, and I feel confidence in my chairs.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
and
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them, and we represent them,
getting by
and we represent
these
them.
long food
and
lines
we represent
that we're seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we say,
we know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is
here
nowhere
in
near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically important. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for your sensitivity to our constituents' needs.
I am sensitive to them because I see them on the street begging for food, begging for money. Madam Speaker, thank you so much.
Have you fed them? We feed them. We feed them.
We'll continue this conversation down the road for sure. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
I've seen that like 5 times, and I keep catching another little bit of it. I mean, let's just start off with this. Shahid, what is your district actually like?
If I may, just say how outrageous the clip is and the entitlement of a public servant who refuses to take questions from voters, who refuses to debate challengers for 30 years, who then has the audacity to deride the rare journalist who actually asks her a challenging question. The entitlement of that figure, to me, is outrageous. And San Francisco, if anything, is a city that deserves a voice in Congress. It's a city with a unique voice, and it's one that is entirely unrepresented in our national legislature. The point that really jumps out at me, listening to Pelosi responding to Wolf Blitzer, is that at least our criminal president demonstrated the respect for our democratic norms to debate his opponent. And that's more than Nancy Pelosi can say. And when a criminal, aspiring fascist tyrant can legitimately claim to respect democracy more than the leader of the so-called Democratic Party, we all have a problem. And I also want to.
You're referring to the fact that Speaker Pelosi has declined to do a debate with you as you're approaching 20 days before the election.
That, but in the broader scope of, it's not just me she's refused to debate. She hasn't let the voters see her record in a generation. And it's not just her failure, it's a failure of the local press as well. And it's I guess my point here is that her response to Wolf is entirely on brand, because this is a figure who frankly takes no questions. The last time she did a public town hall in San Francisco was a year ago in the middle of a weekday afternoon on the West Side. And if you had a button on it that indicated any interest in social justice issues, her private security force wouldn't let you in the building. So, she doesn't take questions from voters, and then she doesn't represent us in any meaningful way. The idea that Nancy Pelosi would have the audacity to talk about feeding us while she declines a stimulus measure. I mean, there is an eviction crisis unfolding across the country. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs. People are struggling with putting food on the table, and she's talking about feeding us while she declines the stimulus package that was 3 times the size of that put in place during the Obama administration. And her attitude of entitlement, again, is the thing that I find so outrageous. It's one thing not to show up for the needs of the American people. It's one thing not to debate a challenger. It's one thing to have the audacity to push back on a journalist asking a tough question. But the entitlement of a figure who frankly bears a lot of similarities to Trump. I mean, we're talking about 2 very wealthy people who govern through theater and are belligerent when challenged. And, I think that San Francisco deserves better. This country deserves better. And frankly, the future needs us to make better choices than sending people like that back to Congress.
So what do you think she plays a lot of politics, right? This is sort of her game, right? It's why she's been able to become speaker. But I just don't understand what her game is in this move. Just she doesn't want to give Trump a win. But I mean, it's so egregious, as you said at the start. It's so out of touch. And I mean, that's partly why Wolf Blitzer, who's usually pretty stone-faced and doesn't show any emotions, I think that's why he pushed back so hard. It's so egregious that in a moment like this, when we're on the precipice of an economic collapse, which will only, even if Biden gets elected, it'll only be worse if Congress doesn't act, and he'll have to deal with more, and Congress, of course, will have to deal with more. So why can't she just take Miss I like to work with Republicans, we'll work with Republicans.
You would hope that her longstanding supposed commitment to bipartisanship might find some expression now in the rare instance that it can be helpful. Unfortunately, I can't explain the speaker's actions. I mean, I can describe a few potential explanations for her MO, her longstanding patterns of rhetorically claiming support for issues that she sells out in practice. I think a lot of that is driven, frankly, by her allegiances to Wall Street before San Francisco. Even in this case, however, that doesn't explain it because, frankly, Wall Street wants to see a stimulus package pass also. And so her allegiance to Wall Street doesn't even explain here her, what I would describe as primarily a partisan position to deny the president a claim to, some sort of policy victory. At the end of the day, the needs of a people in crisis are more important than politics, period. And this idea that Pelosi is unfortunately not terribly strong in the face of the right-wing attack, that is also on brand. And I want to make this point relative to the SCOTUS hearings that are happening this week. A lot of people are outraged about the Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, and they should be. And not enough people are talking about the fact that Nancy Pelosi is one of the critical figures who let these hearings proceed. If she simply filed articles of impeachment, which would be entirely warranted for any number of reasons. Again, right. I mean, just to be clear, the articles of impeachment she filed before were radically under-inclusive. She didn't address anything from the president's corruption to self-enrichment at public expense, his human rights abuses, his incitements to violence, his lies. None of that came into the original impeachment process, nor did a particular issue that has emerged in the months since, a very pernicious one, and that is his conscious risks to public health. Yeah. And that's another, frankly, impeachable offense. Any of those things would be legitimate grounds for the House to proceed with articles of impeachment. And here's the key. They would block the Senate from considering any nomination to the Supreme Court because they'd have to deal with the impeachment process first. So Nancy Pelosi is showing up, having this audacity with Wolf Blitzer to push back on questions about her supposedly master negotiation, while she has resigned all of the arrows in her quiver that could have protected the court, reproductive rights, labor rights, environmental rights, our country's jurisprudence from the continuing attack of a criminal president. This is a Speaker of the House who skates by, paving the path of the right wing, claiming to support progressive principles only because the press has failed to hold her accountable. And another way to put this, there have been so many different people in the media landscape who've been commenting on that interview that you just played. You are the first person to interview her election challenger. And I would just ask, what does that say about our democracy?
Well, I mean, it's also, she did this performative thing, and she even admitted that it wasn't going to go anywhere, saying that, well, President Trump is unfit to be president given his current state, health state. And then it just stopped. It was clearly, but it's not going to be brought up before the election. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.